China's Premier Li Keqiang visited a flooded city and met odd victims. Human rights activists were arrested, and a joke online brought police to the door of a citizen at midnight. China's saving food policy affects famous big eaters' social media accounts, and they fight back with invisible food and superb acting skills. Papua New Guinea is demanding answers about dozens of workers being sent from China. They were vaccinated in China, but the vaccine is not approved by the World Health Organization, and China said those people could test positive after being vaccinated. And competition between China and the free world extends to rare earth element production. Is Beijing losing another card? Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. This Thursday, a top Chinese official went to inspect a mega city hit by record flooding, which has now plagued areas in southern China for nearly 3 months. It's the official's second visit to a flood-stricken region, but one local suspects the disaster victims he spoke with are actors. NTD's Juliet Song reports.
China's Premier Li Keqiang went to Chongqing for a 2-day visit on Thursday. The area is now facing one of its worst floods in history. Chongqing is located in China's southwest. The megacity is around the size of Maine. Video posted online show roads submerged in water. Media reports say over 250,000 people were evacuated. Chinese media reports Li visited areas hit hard by flood waters, but a local says she suspects that the flood victims Li met with could have been actors arranged by local government authorities. A video circulating on the internet shows Li speaking to locals.
If you guys have any difficulties, just let me know.
One person in the video responded.
We don't have any difficulties right now.
But this local has doubts.
The flooding has caused quite a damage. Many places are submerged in water. Li Keqiang came to Chongqing and asked locals if they're facing any challenges. The person in the video says there are none, but we actually have a lot of struggles.
The same day Li visited, local authorities arrested 11 human rights activists in the area.
A group of people stopped me while I was walking along the road. Then they took me to the local police station. No one said why they were doing it. So I was detained for hours just out of the blue.
Chinese state media has stayed unusually quiet about Li's visit. Two of China's major state-run news outlets, Xinhua and People's Daily, didn't even cover his trip. The Chinese State Council website was the only source to publish the news. An expert said the state media's silence carries a political signal. Speaking to Hong Kong media Apple Daily, he said the move indicated Li holds a weak position in the Communist Party's internal power struggle. Juliet Song, NTD News.
Li Keqiang's visit was major news for the province, but a joke about it on social media that went a little too far led to a midnight police visit for one woman involved. Chongqing citizen Tang Jing shared her experience after the fact. We gave her a pseudonym to protect her identity. She told us it all started when she saw a message in a chat group on Chinese social media app WeChat on Thursday. The message explained that authorities have chosen someone to complete a special task to welcome Premier Li Keqiang to Chongqing.
They have a friend who was chosen to be an extra and made to take a CCP virus test overnight. If his result comes back negative, he will be allowed to join the welcome team the next day. So I was joking that I also want to be an extra.
Those on the welcome team were referred to as extras in the chat group, much like the background extras seen in movies. But on Thursday night after midnight, police visited her home. When they realized she wasn't home, they called her, demanding that she go to the police station immediately for questioning. Tang refused, saying she did nothing wrong.
The more pressure they put on people, the more they see everyone as enemies, the closer they're coming to their last day. They are afraid of everything. It's just that during this process, the awakened people are suffering. Because as a conscientious and awakened person, you cannot go back to the old state of ignorance and numbness.
A video goes viral on Chinese social media as a group of young people kneel down in front of the Education Department of Shandong Province, appealing for equity in education. A netizen with the name Ms. Jing Zhen retweets the video with a comment saying you cannot get equity when you kneel. The video shows the protesters are all young people in their 20s, some with a school bag on their shoulders, kneeling down in rows and repeatedly yelling, "We want education equity. We require justice. Leaders come out," as their slogans. A user replied to the tweet, "When people kneel down, power will do evil without restriction." In China, it's not uncommon to see people kneel down to communist authorities and plead for their rights. Not long ago, a group of some 300 seniors kneeled down in front of a government building, asking officials to honor their contract of resettlement. These people had had their homes demolished 7 years ago, but had not yet been rehoused. There were teachers laid off without any pensions that kneeled down to the authorities to solve the problems they now faced over their livelihoods. These people all have the same fate. They are ignored by the CCP regime, and the injustice continues. Some netizens posted pictures depicting the difference between when Chinese people protest within China and overseas in the free world, and say this is the consequence of the CCP brainwashing and brutality. Now we turn to an unusual way Chinese people have found to defend their rights with some success. Their method, when injustice strikes, shoot a video and put it online. One example of that success came on Thursday. That's when the Communist Party Secretary of Bola Village in Guangxi Province was suspended from his post. The move was triggered by a video posted online. It began when a group of villagers recently reported some local issues to the secretary. But rather than listen to their concerns, he ignored them and even put his feet up on the table. His actions conveyed arrogance and disrespect, and the villagers caught it on video. They used the clip to expose his actions online. As it gained traction, some state media outlets even reported on it. Soon after, the town hall that the village belongs to decided to suspend the secretary. But this example is far from the worst case of inaction or corruption from village-level Communist Party secretaries. According to local Chinese media, in 2017, provincial authorities from Harbin province uncovered a major corruption case involving a village secretary and nearly $30 million of embezzlement. He was found to have stolen the money from public funds and was compensated for land acquisition, among other sources. But online videos aren't the only method Chinese people are using to stand up for their rights. Some people take to the streets and public spaces instead to share their message in person, like this elderly man. In a video captured by a bystander, he's seen holding up a sheet of paper with a photo attached. The writing on his clothes also reads, "The Chinese Communist Party is an unreasonable party. Defeat the Communist Party." He added that the Communist Party is fascist. We could not verify the identity of the man, and it's unclear what happened afterwards. Still others have even adopted more ways of opposing the regime's policies. Chinese authorities recently issued orders to conserve food supplies. As a result, many of the country's famous big eaters and their social media accounts have faced backlash from officials. Known as China's Big Eating Kings, their videos were quietly taken down, and the keyword "Eating King" was removed for their account names. But one of the kings came up with a creative and comical way to keep his fan base. Instead of his usual content, now he's making videos pretending to eat foods like burgers and noodles. Although the food isn't visible, he's clearly made an effort to keep his facial expressions, movements, and sounds realistic. Within 2 days, he gained more than 8 million views. U.S. Democrats share their 2020 party platform for the upcoming U.S. election. One major change this year on China policy is the platform did not endorse the One China policy. This as both parties are now taking a harder line on China.
The National Convention of the Democratic Party closed on Thursday. In his speech accepting the party's presidential nomination, Joe Biden mentioned China just once, saying that the U.S. will never again be at the mercy of China and other foreign countries. He was referring to making medical supplies and protective equipment in the U.S., not China. The Democrats shared their 2020 party platform, which did not endorse the One China policy, in contrast to the 2016 version of the platform. The One China policy refers to the policy that there is only one sovereign state under the name China, People's Republic of China, or mainland China, and Taiwan is therefore part of it. The One China policy opposes the idea that there are two states. The 2020 Democrats' party platform said instead, quote, Democrats are committed to the Taiwan Relations Act and will continue to support a peaceful resolution of cross-strait issues consistent with the wishes and the best interests of the people of Taiwan. The Taiwan Relations Act is an act of U.S. Congress from 1979. Back then, the U.S. recognized Communist China. The Taiwan Relations Act defined that the U.S. would maintain relations with Taiwan in different areas at a non-diplomatic level. Beijing has asked all countries having diplomatic relations with it to stay by the One China policy. The platform also says the Democratic Party, quote, will demand China and other countries cease and desist from conducting cyber espionage against our companies.
As the November election approaches, both parties have increased scrutiny of each other. One topic getting more attention lately is China. The Trump campaign created an almost 2-minute-long video delving into Joe Biden's son Hunter's ties to China and questioned his business dealings with the Chinese regime. Trump's own ties to China have also garnered attention. Politico reported Trump had taken out loans with the Bank of China in 2012, amounting to tens of millions for a skyscraper deal. Politico later clarified Trump no longer owes the Chinese bank as the interest was sold later in 2012. The Associated Press also reported in 2017 that Trump won initial approval in China for 38 trademarks, 35 of which were in his name. According to the report, Trump's lawyers applied for the marks in April 2016 amid Trump's first campaign for president. A global trademark attorney told AP many companies registered trademarks in China to prevent others from exploiting their name for commercial gain. According to Politico, Trump's daughter Ivanka has also been awarded trademarks by the Chinese regime. AP reported last year that Ivanka won approval for 16 new trademarks in China in 2018. Critics called the move concerning, as it could open up the White House to pressure from foreign governments. A representative for Ivanka told AP the trademark filings are standard practice to prevent her name from being stolen for profit. Politico also noted Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner has dealings with Chinese investors in his real estate investments. The Pacific country of Papua New Guinea, or PNG, is demanding answers from Chinese authorities. This after China vaccinated dozens of Chinese workers before sending them back to PNG, where the staff work for a local China-owned company. But the problem is the vaccine hasn't been approved by the World Health Organization, and PNG authorities are nervous about whether these workers will spread the virus in the Pacific country, which is under-resourced in its health sector. According to an AFP report, the Chinese company sent a letter to Papua New Guinea saying if any of the workers tested positive, it would reflect the normal reaction of the vaccination and not due to infection. But Papua New Guinea isn't convinced. Its government has expressed worries that the Chinese workers may have circumvented arrival quarantine procedures. PNG authorities have also blocked the arrival of a flight with around 150 Chinese workers on board, due to arrive this week. A local Chinese ambassador told AFP they have no comment on the issue and that China is not doing tests in Papua New Guinea. High-level Chinese diplomat Yang Jiechi is in South Korea for 2 days this week. Korean officials say they will discuss their pandemic cooperation, North Korea, and a potential visit from Chinese leader Xi Jinping.
Yang is visiting southern port city Busan. He's hosted by South Korea's National Security Advisor Seo-hoon. Yang is a member of the Politburo and is head of foreign affairs for the Chinese Communist Party. We spoke to Kim Tai-woo, a military science professor at Keqiang University, about what the visit means. Kim believes that for China, one of its main objectives is to put pressure on Seoul to strongly state its allegiance to Beijing and move away from the U.S. With tensions escalating between the U.S. and China, this puts South Korea in a difficult position. If the U.S. and China weren't in the midst of a fight for power and had a collaborative relationship, we wouldn't find ourselves in this dilemma. But they're doing a zero-sum game. If we partner with one, our relationship with the other will suffer. This situation calls for Seoul to make a strategic decision. South Korea relies heavily on China for trade. In June, Seoul exported $39 billion worth of goods. $11 billion of that was to China. On the other hand, Korea's strong historic military alliance with the U.S. provides stability and security for the country. Kim advises Seoul to take what he calls an alliance plus hedging strategy, where the country definitively solidifies its alliance with the U.S. while also seeking to maintain a minimal relationship with China. We must tell China, we do not want to fight. We want to maintain a friendly relationship, but militaristically, politically, we cannot follow your agenda. We must clearly separate ourselves from that. To the U.S., he suggests Korea says, ideologically, militarily, politically, we value our alliance and will follow your lead. But given that China is our neighbor, the U.S. must understand there will be some economic and cultural exchange. This is Yang's second visit to South Korea following a private meeting in 2018.
All industries are experiencing unprecedented times due to the pandemic. But thanks to oil's price crash, that industry is especially tumultuous. Now a refinery deal between Saudi Arabia and China has been suspended.
Saudi Arabia has halted working together with a Chinese company on a joint project. The oil refinery deal was worth $10 billion. According to sources who told Bloomberg, Saudi Arabia's state company Aramco won't back the petrochemical plant anymore because they are adapting to low oil prices. Oil plummeted to below zero a few months ago. Now the company has stopped investing in the Chinese site. All industries took a hit from the economic fallout of the pandemic, but the oil industry is facing unprecedented times due to the pandemic and the recent oil price crash. The project was signed last year in February when Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman visited China. Back then, it was seen as a landmark deal between two allies. Saudi Arabia wanted to increase its market in Asia. At the same time, they wanted Chinese investments in their kingdom. Neither Aramco nor its Chinese counterparts commented on the report so far. According to Bloomberg, the Chinese will go ahead the project themselves in northeast China. Sources say China might partner up with Saudi Arabia again in the future.
There's growing focus on China's spy operations and how the Chinese consulates are involved. We sat down with Epoch Times senior investigative journalist and host of Crossroads, Joshua Phillip, to find out more. Hello, Josh. Thank you so much for joining us today. Great to have you on the show.
Hey, it's my pleasure, Tiffany. Some great topics to go into.
So after the Chinese consulate in Houston was shut down by the U.S., there's been speculation that the U.S. will shut down other consulates, and so one of the reasons is spying. So what other operations is China running?
Well, when it comes to the Chinese Communist Party and its consulates, they typically run the same basic operations out of most of them. A lot of this is run through what they call the United Front Work Department, and this is its overt system of espionage. It's a branch of the Chinese Communist Party, and they run a lot of their overseas spy operations through it. This is student spies, this is compromising local officials, this is recruiting front organizations or establishing front organizations. They also will invite different Chinese spies to come and operate out of the consulates and run their operations from there.
So what kind of impact does that have on, like, U.S. security, for instance, having these students under China?
Well, when it comes to the student spies, a lot of these are run through the Chinese Student and Scholar Associations, the CSSAs. A lot of different universities in the United States have these. Now, these are operated and funded a lot of times directly by the Chinese consulates. In fact, if you go on the websites of a lot of these CSSAs, in their own documents, they say this a lot of time, stating directly that they're loyal to the Chinese Communist Party, that they get their financing, at least to some extent, from the Chinese consulates, and that they take orders from the Chinese consulates. consulates in terms of how this can be used. Now, a few different areas of this. One is we hear about Chinese students coming to the United States being monitored while they're here. And if, for example, they speak at an event or they say something out of line for the Chinese Communist Party, their families back in China might be threatened, or if they travel back to China, they themselves could be threatened or punished. A lot of these individuals are monitored and reported on by these CSSAs, the Chinese Student and Scholar Associations. And at the same time, the Chinese Communist Party uses these organizations to, one, organize protests. For example, if someone they don't like comes and speaks at the university, they can get them to hold protests which appear to be grassroots, but are actually being, say, pulled, the strings are being pulled by the consulates. And also the Chinese Communist Party can use these different students and grow them to get into different targeted industries. Say, for example, like into the oil industry, or they want to get them to go into a job in, say, U.S. intelligence or security. They can use these organizations for that.
So you mentioned that the CSSA will report on these students and they have a database that is then sent to the CCP. How does that work?
Yeah, so we might have seen articles about Chinese students going back to China and they're being monitored, they're being controlled, they're being attacked by the Chinese Communist Party to different extents. Well, also in the United States, through the United Front Work Department, they have another branch. It's called the Overseas Chinese Affairs Office. This organization does all kinds of things. They might do propaganda on behalf of the CCP, but one of the big things they do is they monitor the Chinese citizens who are living abroad, or even second and third generation Chinese immigrants. So, for example, your grandma might have come from China. You could still be monitored and tracked under the Chinese Communist Party system on this. That's the Overseas Chinese Affairs Office. And a lot of times they use different methods to pressure and even threaten Chinese Americans on American soil in Chinatowns.
Well, thank you so much, Josh, for joining us today.
Hey, it's my pleasure, Tiffany.
The U.S. is working to ensure it has enough rare earth mineral supplies, something crucial for industry and weapons production. The ability to produce it could become deathly important if the Western world decouples with China, especially if war breaks out with the communist regime.
The confrontation between China and the free world extends to the area of rare earth, something very important for industry, including weapons production. The U.S. recently approved $620 million worth of military sales contracts to Taiwan. The sale will help the island upgrade its PAC-3 missile defense system. Lockheed Martin is the sale's main supplier. Beijing, who claims the Democratic Taiwan mainland Chinese territory, announced sanctions against Lockheed Martin in retaliation. The top weapon-producing company doesn't sell to China, but it does import rare earth from the country. China holds 95% of the world's rare earth production, while the U.S. is the #1 rare earth consumer. 80% of the U.S.'s rare earth supply comes from China. 30 years ago, former Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping boasted, "There's oil in the Middle East and rare earth in China." So what exactly is rare earth? Rare earth minerals make up a group of 17 elements in the periodic table. They're sometimes called the vitamins of modern industry. Rare earth elements have essential uses in a range of civil and military technologies, including cell phones, cars, rechargeable batteries, computer memory, DVDs, cameras, television screens, catalytic converters, magnets, fluorescent lighting, aircraft engines, and weapons. Beijing's move on Lockheed Martin is now pushing U.S. and its allies to develop non-Chinese rare earth suppliers. The U.S. Defense Department has already signed agreement with Australian miner Lynas, the world's second-largest producer of rare earth materials, to build a rare earth separation plant in Texas. In reality, rare earth elements aren't actually rare. Russia, the United States, Australia, India, and South Africa are also rich in them. The problem arises because, unlike other materials, the extraction of rare earth requires a complex and expensive process. It includes using acids to separate rare earth elements from rocks or sediment, an extremely dangerous task. Likewise, the mining and disposal of rare earth can cause serious toxic pollution. Compared to the West, China's lack of environmental and worker protections, plus its low labor costs, make it possible to sell rare earth at a much cheaper price point. It has supplied 85 to 95% of the world's rare earth since the 1990s. A decade ago, an article published by China's mainstream media claimed China sells rare earth at the price of potatoes and doesn't earn enough to handle the resulting pollution. pollution problems stop many Western countries from producing rare earth elements. Some say that's the only reason China dominates the industry. But now, Beijing's threat has instead sparked the emergence of competitors. The question now is how long Beijing can still play its rare earth card. Reporting by Xu Wenhui, NTD News.
And that's all for today's China in Focus. Thanks for watching and see you next time.